Good evening and best wishes to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you that in order to avoid any disturbances, I would like to ask you to turn off your microphone during the presentation session. And I would like to inform you that this FGD session will also be recorded and uploaded to GSB's YouTube channel in a few days. Thank you.
First of all, let's say thanks to God who has been giving us mercy, guidance, happiness, and health so we can attend and participate in this event without any obstacles. Our honorable speakers and all participants, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your enthusiasm to participate. My name is Abdul from Statistics Department Batch 55, and as you can see, this evening I'm not alone. Here with me is my partner.
Hi, my name is Raja Ahmad Al-Fikri from Statistics Department, Batch 56. We'll be the moderator for today's FGD session this evening, and we're very pleased to see you here and welcome all of you to this session. I would like to inform you that this session will be divided into four. The first one will be the opening session, and then followed by the presentation session, and then discussion session, and then followed by the closing. And for today's FGD, we're going to be discussing on climate action.
But before we move to the presentation, may I introduce to you our speaker this evening. Joining us today are amazing people. Our first speaker, he is now an undergraduate student of IPB University from major of Geophysics and Meteorology.
He's also chosen to be the member of Yango, a constituent of youth within the United Nations, and has also been chosen as staff of External Division of Himagreto from 2020 until 2021. He was also the top 10 finalist at the 12th G-Days competition and has many more achievements to his name.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Nur Muhammad Dhohir. Hi Dhohir, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. It's so good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
And moving on to our second speaker, he's currently working in European projects on air quality all over northern Italy and has also been an observer of the Conference of the Parties since 2015, the year in which the Paris Agreement was actually approved on. And he's also an active member of Yango and has lots of publications to his name.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Domenico Vito. Hi, Mr. Vito, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thanks, and pleasure to be here.
Okay, it's such pleasure to have you here because this is the first time we invite speaker from foreigners and it's become something that, that is exciting for us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks to you.
Okay, so we've already met our speakers, and so without further ado, I would like to give the time to our speakers for presenting. So Mr. Vito and Kak Dhohir, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible for you?
Yes, Kak, you're audible.
Okay. Welcome and thank you very much for reaching out to me and inviting us on this great event. This is my pleasure to be here to share things about climate actions, taken urgent action to combat climate change and how it's impacts our nature, how it's impacts our environment and also our life. I think before we start our explanation on this event, for being politely, we must introduce about ourselves, and I think that Domenico have some things with me. So yeah, let me start. I'm Dhohir. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Department Geophysics and Meteorology. I'm studying about applied meteorology. So basically, I get a basic knowledge about climate change. I think that's all from me. Domenico, gimana bro?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Domenico Vito. I'm an engineer. I'm working in a European project related to air quality, and I'm also a climate leader at the Climate Reality Project Team Italy, and also active member of Yango and collaborating also with Dhohir in several projects.
Okay, that's really great. Yeah. So in this explanation, we decided to divide into two parts. The first one is about climate change and its impact in our country, and it will be delivered by me. And the second one is about climate actions in the personal action, local communities, national and international level that will deliver by Domenico. But we highlight about the climate action in at the international level. So yeah, let's start with a bit. In my view, whenever we're talking about climate change, we can call it crisis of the time, because we are limited by the time right now. And we're talking about climate crisis and how we can to slow it down. It's the important things before we start to know more, to know further about climate change and climate action. But in the other hand, before we start to know more about climate change, we have to get to know what is the difference between weather and climate, because in my view, it's really, really important. Okay, the first one, weather. What is weather? We know that weather we usually use in our words, in our daily activity. Weather. Okay, next. Go to the next slide. So we can see on this slide, weather is actual value of atmosphere condition, as well as short time. We can see on the slide, less than an hour until less than 24 hour. So basically, it's a certain time of a cyclical pattern, as known as diurnal weather changes. It's easy to understand. We have a day and we have a night. So day is whenever we get the solar radiation from the sun, and the night is whenever we didn't get the solar radiation from the sun. So it's that we call weather. And how about climate? Climate is a synthesis or average value of the weather condition, of weather elements like air temperature, wind speed, wind direction, and so on. And with the time, day by day and month by month. So we have a long-term period of place or in a region. So basically, in the field of time, weather and climate is different. Whenever climate is part of weather. Okay, so you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so literally, a World Meteorological Organization defined that climate is measurement of the mean and variability of relevant quantities of certain variables, such as air temperature, precipitation, or wind, that I said before, over a period of time ranging from months to thousand or million of years. And as you know, that weather and climate are system that built by various components that influence the formation of weather and climate. So like solar radiation, dynamic and composition of the atmosphere, ocean, ice and snow cover the earth and its shape. So basically, we have atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and we have biosphere, plants, animals, and human, that interaction between all of the composition of that component. So the interaction within and between these components through physical, biological, and chemical process. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So how do we know about climate change is real? Maybe you were wondering about this one. These are the levels of carbon dioxide emissions in our atmosphere before the pre-industrial revolution. Industrial revolution. So we know that the global carbon dioxide emission is increase and decrease, increase and decrease. But on the last graphics, we can know that 19 and 50, the global carbon dioxide were rising. And if we continue the graphics from the IPCC and another organization, we know that the global carbon dioxide were rising by about 1% per year over the previous decade. But this that took off during the industrial revolution. We started breaking carbon dioxide record in 90 and 50, and we haven't stopped since. So but the concern is not the earth is getting warmer. So the global carbon, you can go to the next slide, please, before I continue. Okay, and this one. So the correlation between carbon dioxide and sea level, sea temperature is whenever the carbon dioxide is rising, the sea level, the sea temperature will rising too, and it will be affect us also. Okay, we can see on this graph each year, human release nearly 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and every person have a contribution of this one. And if we average, it will be about 5.5 tons for every person on this planet. So all of you have a contribution to make this climate change is happen. And but the concern is not the earth is getting warmer. Like I said before, the United Nations says that right now our world is about 1 degree hotter than pre-industrial times. That's around a 80s year, and yeah, which is okay. In fact, the UN says if we warm by 1.5 degree before the end of this century, we should be fine. Even 2 degrees will probably be all right for us. Again, but again, I highlight the problem is not the getting warmer. The problem in here is speed of the increase of the temperature, increase the carbon dioxide. Because right now we are on track on hit 1.5 degrees. It's only 10 years. So, and if we don't slowing if we don't slow the warming down, it could mean catastrophe within my lifetime and also maybe yours too. And we are already getting a taste. Yeah. Now we have a plan on Paris Agreement that we have a maximum is 1.5 degrees and or to a before the year 2000 and 21st century. I mean, so basically, if we go to a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius, Indonesia will affected by this one. Why? Because we have a lot of island. We will discover a lot of island because the sea level are rising. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Yeah, I think this slide I explained before. And so the causes is because of fossil fuels that we use to power our home, to industry, and using cars, and also another transportation that using fossil fuels. And also population grow. It will affect the consuming a lot of animals. A scientist said that 95% probability that human activities over the past 50 years have warmed our planet. IPCC 2015. I mean 14. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is the what we get. What is climate change impact? Climate change is happening right now. Drought, floods, and wildfires are starting to occur more frequently, and ice are starting to melting right now, and we get the bad air pollution every day. So basically, this is the impact of climate change. So natural disaster is becoming more and more intense, and situation creating a situation that is a real threat to humankind, and we are not doing enough. So basically we need to take an action right now. Okay, I think that's all from me about climate change and its impact. And the next explanation, it will be climate action and will be delivered by Domenico. I give the floor to Domenico.
Thank you, Dhohir, for your speech and for introducing me. Yes, Dhohir states the phenomenon of climate change, but when humanity have started to talk about climate change and environmental issues, and which are the instruments both at the local and international level that the humanity decided to use to face the problem. Let's start with a bit of history. First of all the discourse on climate change has started with this study, The Limit of Growth. It will be held in 1972, commissioned by the Club of Rome, and done by a group of economists of the MIT. And what the goal of this study was to set the condition for the growth into this finite Earth. You will imagine that Earth is a finite planet, and the economists have to study which are the conditions to continue to grow. You have to imagine also that that period in 1972, after the two world wars, the world was in a great expansion, both as like demographic growth, but also an economical growth. And what they state, which are the results of these studies, that based on 6 variables, they state that it's not possible to continue to grow at the same rate that was at that period. And to avoid this all, it was important to implement drastic measures to protect the environment. So next slide, please. And so after that study, something has like started. In particular, the international community has decided to discuss about the problem of a finite environment and the problem of growth at the international level. And the first global conference held by United Nations was Stockholm in 1972. So why is important this conference? Because first of all, was the very, very important step to start the discussion about climate change. There was the declaration of United Nations Conference on the Human Environment that decides several points on how human and environment has to interact, an action plan for human environment, but most of over, it decided to create a proper agency that was called UNEP, UN Environmental Protection Agency, to cope with the problem of environment in general, but also climate change. Next slide, please. And properly starting by UNEP in conjunction with the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, another body after a few years has risen, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a group of scientists from all over the world that are committed to study the state of climate change. So actually, the IPCC is the most important scientific body that address the climate change and also make reports on the state of climate change. It's divided in 4 working groups. One of which is dealing with a particular topic of the climate change problem. The first one is most related to the physical basis. The second one is more impact, adaptation, and vulnerability. The third one is mitigation. And there is also a task force that manages the interconnection with the other bodies of the UN. And so this body was very important because it made the steps for the further discussion at international level related to climate change. Next slide, please. So, which were the important steps? Yes, Dhohir has stated the situation as it is, what we know today about the climate change, but was not so clear in the years before. But thanks to the IPCC, we reached this scientific knowledge. And the very important step that was held by IPCC was at first in 1990, when the first report of IPCC was done. And this report was properly stating that the climate change could be related to human activities with a high probability. Another important step was in 2040, with the 4th assessment report. You have to imagine that each 5 years, as was written before in the slide, the IPCC is producing a report, but the very important one was the 4th assessment report, then led to the Paris Agreement. In this report was stated very clear that if we would not change our production of emission of greenhouse gases, the rise of temperature of the planet will reach levels that could not be controlled in their effects. And in particular, the fourth assessment report was in kind of enforced by the special report 1.5 degrees, by which the IPCC states that was important to maintain the rise of temperature of global warming inside 1.5 degrees. So next slide, please. And so, together with the first meetings and the contribution of IPCC and the scientific studies, the first, like, very global framework on climate change was born. After the Brundtland report that was stating and defining the concept of sustainable development that comes from the limits of growth, in 1992 was held the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. The Earth Summit was the first conference of parties, and it gave rise to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. What is this convention? It is a global non-binding agreement that was formally signed by 144 states that defines the problem of climate change as due to anthropogenic factor. And that was important to the state intervene in a global and multilateral level to address the problem of climate change. And most important, this convention reprised the concept of sustainable development that I tell you because it's very important also in the sake of future generation, that the sustainable development is the sustainable development that satisfies the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to satisfy their. Next slide, please. So, as you've seen before, the convention has several articles, is like a legal framework. But the very important article is the Article 3, because it contains the principle of the convention. And which are the principles of the convention? First of all, we can say that the convention addresses the common but differentiated responsibility. You have to imagine that at that time, there was a big discussion among states among who was like most polluting. And the common differentiated responsibility states that was important to consider in the common effort also the historical responsibility of the emission of greenhouse gases, but also the condition in which the developing and emerging state were, because there were like kind of different state also of development. The second principle is intergenerational equity, protecting the climate for the benefit of the future generation. This principle stands properly as following the sustainable development. Then the precaution principle. Each action needs to be precautionary in the impact on the environment. So it's important that every action can prevent any damage and effects on environment and climate. And of course, the promotion of sustainable development. And very important, another principle of the convention was that the lack of science should not represent a reason to postpone the action. That was very important for fostering climate action in the next year. So in the map that you see at the right, you can see the differentiated countries' responsibilities. Together with the convention, there are two annexes that defines the so-called Annex 1 and Annex 2 countries that have common but differentiated responsibilities. Next slide. So these slides show the structure of UNFCCC. After the convention, of course, there was a global organization at the UN level of the world agency committed to maintain and organize the UNFCCC convention. And so this is a structure. the UNFCCC now is a body that have a secretariat that is committed to organize the different negotiation to foster on the convention. And together with the secretariat, there are several also bodies. There is the assembly of the party or conference of parties that represents like the gathering of all the states that discuss the progress of the convention. But also there are two important bodies that are the so-called SABSTA, that is the scientific and technological body for the scientific and technical bodies, like the knowledge base and interface between the science and the policy. And there is the SBI, so the subsidiary body for implementation, that is committed to define the strategic lines in which to implement all the action and decision that are ratified by the assembly, so the conference of party. Together with this structural body, there are also a lot of non-state stakeholder organization. In particular, the UNFCCC is a process that wants to be very involved, very participatory, and wants also to involve the civil society. And so, together with the structure that I said before, there are also the so-called constituencies. One of these is properly Yango, that is the constituency of youths, on which me and Dhohir are parts of. And you have to imagine that the constituency of youths is made by more than 2,000 youth NGOs and organizations and more than 700 individuals. We are working in working groups in order to foster and bring the voice of youths also at the UNFCCC. Next slide, please. So, in this slide, I try to resume the long path of the Conference of Parties. I say that the first Conference of Parties, so the first assembly of all the nations that are discussing about the convention and climate change, was held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. Since then, each year there is a Conference of Parties. So a moment in the year where all the states are called by the Secretariat to continue discuss and to get progress towards coping with the problem of climate change. So I don't want to mention all of the year, but just to state the important step, I suggest also to see on the reference that I post there if you want like a more complete history, but which were the very important steps in this path. Surely the COP3 in 1997 with the ratification and implementation of Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol was the first agreement that was decided by the states to reduce emission and to contrast the climate change. Was not perfect. Of course, then the parties decide to find another agreement. But you have to know that the Kyoto Protocol is still active. It was renewed in 2013, sorry. But it was important because it was the first global agreement on reducing emission. Then several conferences has also reached to the very, very important step that is Paris in 2015, where was like signed and ratified the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is an important step and is the actual agreement to fight climate change. Before, of course, several other conferences like Doha with the Doha framework, Warsaw that decided the mechanism of loss and damage to find financial measures in order to cope with the damages just caused by climate change. And then, of course, we are reaching now the COP26 that is Glasgow, and I will say something about at the end. But let's go to focus on the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. So, Paris Agreement is an agreement that stands with 15 articles, and it's very important because it ratifies that all the commitments of the global commitments of states to fight the climate change has to be addressed to maintain the global temperature well below and even to 1.5 degrees. So all the parties are requested to commit jointly on a multilateral action in order to reach this goal. So actually there are 197 states that are that have signed the Paris Agreement. But what's important, as was for the Kyoto Protocol, that at least 15 countries represent at least 55% of the emissions of the global emission will ratify this agreement to be active. So it is, the parties have agreed to sign this agreement, and now Paris Agreement is active. So let's go into the very, very principle of the Paris Agreement. And so let's go to the next slide. So Paris Agreement is very important because commit the states to present the national determined contribution. The national determined contribution are like the strategies and the commitments also at a long-term level that the states are asked to present to say that they are really diminishing the emission or on their nations. Then NDCs are like a kind of mechanism in which each one of the states is asked to contribute by its facilities. And they are voluntarily contribution. But which is the very, very important point of this, that even though they are voluntary and they seems to be not binding, they have to be agreed at the global level. So if I'm a country and I want to to present a strategy, this strategy needs to be discussed multilaterally. So all the states have to agree to my strategy. And it is a very, very, very important and strong binding and also commitment. You have to imagine that it's like a balloon. You have to let fly a balloon. In the lower part of the slide, I try to figure out with a metaphor the principle of Paris Agreement. You have to imagine that the doctors, the scientists, have rated like the right weight to let fly a balloon. The scientists are like the IPCC scientists. And so two guys or more guys, one that is more fat, one that is more thin, and so on, have to agree together to reach the weight by which the balloon can fly. So they have to agree to have to reach the common goal. That is, for example, stay inside 1.5 degrees. And to the doctor is not depending if like the one is going fat or the one is going thin and so on. They have to agree together to reach the final goal. So they have to say, okay, for myself, I can thin, for myself, I can weight a lot and so on. But you have to find the right weight. Standing to like technical terms, this right weight is also called global stock take. The global stock take is kind of the amount of emission that are allowed to stay in the trajectory of 1.5 degrees annually. So the global stock take say you can emit world altogether just that amount to stay in the trajectory on 1.5 degrees. Last thing that I want to say on this slide, that the NDCs are updated each 5 years. So the states are asked to update their commitment and their strategy each 5 years. For example, the next COP will be the chance for several states to update and to revise their NDCs. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this last slide is like the road to the future. So the next COP, we reached the 25 conference of parties, and the next one will be the COP26 in Glasgow. As I stated before, is a very important step because several states have to present their update in NDCs, but not only. We have to fully implement the Paris Agreement finally. Just a notification. Paris Agreement was rated, and so all the countries has agreed to follow the Paris Agreement. But its implementation is still lacking in some points. And so it's important the next COP to take the chance to finally implement fully the Paris Agreement. But it's not important only for this. As you can see in this roadmap, there are several chances by which you as youths and also we together, we can act together to commit to fight climate change. And now I will say something also about that. You can see, for example, on the very, very right side, the LCOI. What is LCOI? Is the Local Conference of Youths. Is a conference that UNFCCC and Yango are like asking to organize to the local groups of youths to talk and to like discuss about climate change. Also with Yango, we are making these series of step ups that are like kind of capacity building webinar to reach the COP26. So I will stop here because my time is ended. You can find all these events that you can see in the map as very important appointment for commit. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much to Mr. Vito and Dhohir for the presentation. What you've conveyed through your presentation is very insightful and also paints an incredible image on what's going on with it and what will happen with our climate in the future.
Now, after we get even deeper knowledge about climate action, we will continue the discussion session. This session is divided into two termines, and for the first termine, we open for the questions or opinions.
So for the audience, if you have any questions or opinions, please turn on your camera or microphone and then mention your name. You can also mix it with Bahasa if you want.
Are there any questions or opinions?
Hello, my name is Ayu Hidayati Munashirah. I want to ask something. In a few times ago, there was a sensational news that Sahara Desert was hit by snow. As we know that Sahara Desert is a dry place or a hot place, so it is little bit impossible that snow can fall in there. I wanna ask that it is a natural phenomenon or it is a possible phenomenon or it is a bad signs that the world is not good condition. Because in Indonesia, because in Indonesia, so many news that say that it is the end of the world. Itu padahal kan nggak tahu. So, how your opinion about this? Thank you.
Okay, I think this is the tough questions. Okay, so I just want to say that Domenico, Indonesia people think about that. Whenever the disaster is come, a natural disaster is coming or happen or occur, almost all people in Indonesia think that this is the end of the world because the God is will affect us. So I think it's related to our region, but we must divide. We must eliminate the religion part and we think to a physical basis. So whenever we're talking about the snow is occur in Sahara, and we just being in Bogor a few months ago we get ice rainfall. Yeah, whenever you're thinking about the condensation in the atmosphere, it will be happen in because we have a topographics that force the clouds, force the evaporation in something like that to the atmosphere, and whenever the temperature is enough to make an ice, and then the ice is going down to our earth, and the temperature is not enough to make the ice is melting into the water. So basically, we get the ice, but it's not all the ice, because we have also the rainfall of water. At the same problem in Sahara, we also can get the snow, because the Sahara is not equatorial area, and it probably will happen too. About the snow is occurring on there. I think that's about opinion, and it can be described by meteorology and climatology. And yeah, I think it's if we think about the physical basic.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Dhohir. Maybe we can move to Mr. Vito answer.
Yes,
Time to
I can say that Dhohir has responded perfectly. I just want to add that even is like I don't know, kind of sort of punishment or not. The problem is that depends on us. The scientist has been clear that there are like now there is like the 99 probability we can say that the global warming is caused by the the activities of anthropogenic activities, so related to the activity of the humans. But as we are humans the cause, we can also be the solution. And so this is the very message also that we can take from this climate change discourse. Of course, we have not to despair. We have to be aware. So after the like awareness, there is the action. That's very important. Just finishing with the one word of the founder of my organization, that is Al Gore, we can say that hope is a renewable energy, and we have to not lose hope. We have to find from the despair the hope to react. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Vito, for the answer. Are you satisfied with the answer of our two speakers, or do you have other opinions?
Yes, sure. Satisfied.
Okay, thank you, Ayu.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Any or opinion? Anybody else want to express their question or opinion?
Hello.
Yes, please, Monica.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Hello. I'm so glad to hear your explanation. That's so good. I introduce my name is Monica. I want to ask you about something that's also just happened. In the world, there is a COVID that makes government set rules, laws, policy not to travel and reduce the activities made the crowd some time ago. This makes people no not go out, and there is news that pollution and carbon dioxide are reduced very much. Even the ozone layer that was once leak becomes barely. So, what is your opinion about this phenomenon? Thank you.
Yeah, I think Domenico. I just when that question is when right over my head, and I think that Domenico, would you wanna go first?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. That is very interesting. I can say this. I take the like the experience of my country. I come from Italy, and especially I come from the northern part of Italy. That, as you, I don't know if you know, but has been one of the most heated point zones of Italy by COVID. And of course, the scientists and also several scientific organizations has started to find some relationship between COVID and air pollution and so on. and particularly in a project in which I'm working, they saw that some kinds of pollution have been lower down. Not all, especially going a little bit, but not too much in technically, the NOx and PM10 as greatly decreased, but others not. For example, the ammonia and other pollutants in the air has not stopped, but which was like how we can explain this? Of course, by COVID we travel less, so all the pollutants that are related to traveling and to transportation have been decreases. But for example, the ones that are depending from heating and house heating are not too much lowering because the people are more in the homes. As well, the ones related to agriculture. For example, ammonia is very related to agricultural activities. And for example, in my region, in Lombardy and also northern region part, the ammonia levels are still at the high level. And so depends on the pollutant. But what we can say about COVID and climate change is that COVID and climate change can be very connected. I don't want to stress too much on the zoonotic disease and so on. I think that you will know that several studies has find a correlation between the loss of biodiversity and the probability of zoonosis, so the translation of the virus from animals to humans. But the very important thing is that for the very first time, this pandemic has need to be addressed at the global level, and we can say without borders. Each one of us were affected, and all together as communities, as global communities and states, we're in the same situation, and we need to find a solution. Yeah, we can say that is something similar to what is needed for the climate change. And even though there are several differences, we can say that fighting the COVID situation is, we can say, is kind of rehearsal of fighting the climate change, just to make a metaphor.
Okay, great, Domenico. Just mentioned about the answer from Domenico about the relation between COVID and climate change. It's really that you know that the travel is, we realize of travel, I mean, surface travel and also airplanes and so on. But one thing that I want to say to you is the COVID-19 is not only the way to reduce the emissions from the carbon dioxide. So we don't think to make this COVID is long term, because we need to meet again in offline, not online, because you know. And Domenico said that we need to action in local communities, and just mention about sometimes people in Indonesia especially think about climate change is not real because it's not happening to me and I don't want to see more. So if you're asking when climate change is happen to me, so basically you are really asking what is going climate change will happen to me, because it's already happened in many other people. So in here on the 90 and 92, the first conference of parties at Earth Summit, we know that we must think globally. Whenever you think globally, you think that in other country, floods and drought is happening and more frequently. And what happened if especially Indonesia, the carbon dioxide emission is not only from the surface transportation, not only from the transportation, but also the one of the biggest emitting sector from the from Indonesia is deforestation. We must focus on that. I just mentioned that take personal action is not enough to combat the climate change, to tackle the climate change. We must also make a collective action, because we need, we as youth, the role of youth is prominent. We need to be part of the decision making, to make government is care about our environment, to make in this industry is care about environment. So basically take personal action is not enough to combat the climate change, and yeah, we can work together to change the world, to make a better life in the future. I think that's all from me.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Vito and Dhohir, for the answer. Monica, are you satisfied with this answer? Or do you have any other opinions?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Domenico and Mr. Noor. Your answer is so good, and thank you. I feel satisfied.
Okay, thank you, Monica.
Okay, I think we still have time. Are there any more? Are there any more people that want to express their opinions or ask any questions?
Can I add something? Can I add something from moderator?
Yes, Kak.
Yeah, I think the goals in this event is not only to know more about climate actions and climate change, but also want to improve and enhance our English skill, English ability to speaking on English. And just want to share to you, I just joined Yungo 8 months ago, and the first time I met Domenico, I turn off my camera, and I don't. I'm very shy and embrace to speak on English, because it's hard to speak on English at the first time. And Domenico said to me that English is not our native language, and whenever you think you don't have to remove your native language, I mean bahasa, because it's a treasure, and thus it means that your pronunciation. Whenever you cannot speak on English fluently and properly, it doesn't matter, because it's your essence, because it's your characteristic. So yeah, just feel free to making add your opinion in here, not just a question, because we also want to hear from you what the action that you doing right now, take personal action or local communities and all and so on. Yeah, I just want to add like that, and yeah, let's have the discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Dhohir, for the suggestion.
And yes, I fully agree with Dohir here. I know that speaking English is hard, but we have to conquer our fears here. So if anybody don't be shy here. If anybody here wants to ask a question or give their opinion on what they're going to do about climate change, or what they've actually done to take action against it by themselves, even though it might not matter in the global scale, but at least they're taking part and doing something for the climate change itself. So anybody want to share?
I saw maybe an hand raised.
Oh, there's somebody raised their hand. Oh, Kayola. Kayola, you may ask away now. I think she might have mispressed the button. Yes. My apologies. It appears that Kayola has mistakenly pressed the raise hand button. Okay. Anybody else? Don't be shy, guys.
Okay, if nobody wants to make an opinion, I just want to say that I think Alia is turning on.
Actually, I want to ask a question.
Okay, Alia, go ahead.
Actually, I just browsing and then I found that actually Paris Agreement is kind of the failure as I see in this article, because like the top countries that emitting gases are not not meet their target. Instead, they are increasing the emission gases. In my opinion, I think this kind of agreement should make a kind of enforcement mechanism to make the states or countries that in this agreement to kind of take this agreement seriously. And in my opinion, I think uh, there should be kind of penalty in this kind of agreement if like states can meet the target. But what is in your opinion? I think if you put like penalty, it will be a very bad thing to because countries have their own problems, like right. How about your opinion about this?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That was a great question, and I think I can answer this question because it's out of my field. And I think the answer is on the last meeting of us, Domenico, on the Sustainable Friday about the governance and global governance. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for the question. That also this one is very interesting. I can respond like this. First of all, on the first part, is Paris Agreement a failure? Um, I will try to respond. Firstly, make try to figure out this image that once I saw in on other presentation, and then I take in my presentation, and sometimes I use that. This image is kind of like a comic that say, if we are thinking about a better word for nothing, and another one from the crowd will respond, yes, but finally we thought about a better word. That means, of course, everything is improvable, and there are like ranges of improvement. But the Paris Agreement is like very important that it is, because even though we will continue to rise emission and to don't put the problem on the right point, and so it's important to have it. I think that for my opinion, I think it is a good agreement. Of course, it's important that more and more states need to commit. But we can say that some of the big polluters, USA now, also China, also Europe, and so on, are inside the agreement, and this is very important. But the fact is that if you never start thinking that there is something even better, you will not never find the goal, because you are waiting for the perfection. And of course, in the meanwhile that you are waiting for the perfection, the emission is rising. So Paris Agreement is a stepstone in this sense. Regarding the payment, I can say this. Kyoto Protocol was kind of like system in which there were some like payment in front of some, I don't know, not respecting the not respectance of the article of the Kyoto Protocol. The final results was that the richest states were more keen to pay the taxes rather than to reduce the emission. They say, okay, if it is like this infraction costs like this, okay, for me it's better to pay the infraction rather than to implement all the strategy and so on. And finally, the Kyoto Protocol was a failure because the goal of Kyoto Protocol was to reduce by 5% the emission, and finally the emission has risen at 70% when in 2030. So the mechanism won't work because you like push on the guilty, we can say, on the guilty of the states. More like strategic and long term is to push towards a systemic change that the Paris Agreement is asking. So you are, if you, even if you have the money, if you can pay the infraction on the Paris Agreement, you are committed to submit a strategy to turn into, to make an ecological transition and to reduce emission. This is your goal. And is also strategic by another point, because this way also in the mobilizing financial resources to change, not like to pay, to change the system. Another innovation of Paris Agreement is that more like financial and economical resources is put in a positive way to foster the change. So is given, for example, the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, are given to projects that are committed to mitigate and to adaptate. This mobilization has helped also the civil society, the private sector, to be engaged in the reduction of emission. And this was like the key. So you have not just to pay because you are faulty, but you are like encouraged to do something. And this is something that is given a lot of results.
Okay, I just want to add about Domenico said global governance, and I just want to say that we don't think to put a penalty to each country and so on. I just want to say that everyone can support the NDC, national determination contribution from each country, because each country have a solution. Each country have their own youth. So basically, everyone can do. I mean, climate actions is we need two things. The first one is personal action. It means that we shifting to renewable energy. I mean, not shifting to renewable energy, just reduce your electrical energy. And whenever you want to go somewhere or visit somewhere that near from your home, don't use your vehicle and so on. And yeah, just manage your waste food and so on. And at least meet and cycle more and consume a bit carefully. So basically, the important things, I mean, in this case, I think that how we can include ourselves as youth to be part of decision making in our country. So basically, whenever we talking about climate action to contribute in our country, the first I just give the ways to you. The first one, please educate yourself first. You know, you must thinking about what is climate change, what is climate action, why this problem is such a big problem for everyone. And then you can go to the local communities. I mean, after you educate yourself, the personal action, and you can go to local communities with simple action like make an allies, or make sharing knowledge with other people, sharing about what do you think about climate change, and then convince people to do same with you. And after that, yeah, after that we can work together. We can make a collaboration, and also if you can go to international level, sharing with other perspective for from other country. So I just want to make the conclusion before we end, before we finish this event. The climate movement doesn't need a perfect hero, a perfect person with a perfect word, with a perfect tweet, and the perfect of back of our story. What we need is just regular person who want to stand up, to heads up, to see more what happened in our country, to stand up and put our hands together to protect our children. So two things that I said before is convince all people to be to care about our environment, and the second part is we educate our next generation to make better life in the future. And so we need to stand up for this planet, to stand up for our home, and to stand up for our future. those will be the hero. Well, I'm telling you, there is a hope. When we combine our voice and our action, we are powerful. Together, we can do it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for Mr. Vito and Dhohir for the great answer. Hopefully, with the discussion, we can change our view on the topic of our SDGs today.
And unfortunately, we've come to the conclusion of our discussion session. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions we didn't get to today, or you sort of new questions along the way, please contact Kado here or Mr. Vito at the contact shown on the screen. And we'll also post a recording of this FGD session on GSP's YouTube channel in a few days.
I would like to say thank you to Dhohir and Mr. Vito for answering these questions and for the great presentations. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And also, thank you to the audience for your active participation. Hopefully, the discussion will be remarkable and helpful for you all. And don't forget to fill the attendance link in ipb.link/presensi FGD 3.
And now, unfortunately, we've come to the last session of this FGD, which is the closing session. But before ending today's FGD, we'll have a photo session. So for the audience, please turn on your camera and show us your best poses. I'll take a screenshot from here, and on the count of 3, give us your best poses, okay? Okay, guys, you can turn on the camera now. Okay, so still waiting for a few people. Okay, on the count of on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you to you.
And finally, on behalf of the Beta Club staff, I'd like to express my appreciation to all the participants for taking time out of your busy duties and coming to this FGD session this evening.
And also, we would like to apologize for any mistake and mispronouncing that we did during the event. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Please have a wonderful evening, guys. Goodbye and see you.
See you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you, Domenico. Ciao.
Thank you to you. Ciao, ciao.